All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Frances McGinnis, and I'm very excited to have this webinar today and have Lisa share all things about knowing aging now and thanking yourself later. Just wanted to introduce myself first. As I said, I'm Mary Frances, and I am, uh, thank you. You. I'm a volunteer with Iona. I've been involved with Iona for about 20 years. I got involved because a friend of mine introduced me to Iona, and the amazing elder care experts helped me with a family friend who was 96 and had fallen, and they found a fantastic facility for her and helped her recover and live a thriving life. And I was pretty much hooked after that. So now at the age of 55, I've got a lot of friends who are going through similar things with family members and loved ones. And I get a lot of questions from people about how to care for their loved ones, where they should go. And of course, I always turn them over to Iona. So we thought it would be a great time to kind of share some of this amazing information that Lisa has. Before I get introduced Lisa, I just wanted to go through a few housekeeping items. Could everyone keep their phones on mute just so we can not have too many interruptions along the way? And if you do have questions, which I hope you do, please put them in the chat. And at the end of the hour, we will get to them or get to as many of them as possible. If we don't get to your question, don't fret. We will get back to you on email shortly thereafter, addressing your questions. And you may want to take notes because there's going to be a lot of great information coming your way in this next hour. But just know also we'll be sharing some information that you'll see on the slides during this presentation, and we will be sending out a summary of what we're talking about to you all after this call. So don't get too worried if you miss something, because there is going to be a lot of information that we're going to share. So I'm about to introduce this great woman, Lisa, a good friend of mine, Lisa Ridner, who I've been working with for about a year and a half, marketing her program, Aging and Caregiving Support. We are doing a lot of different marketing things to get the word out about all of her knowledge. I have to say, we're also spending a lot of time on these calls talking about our, I think, healthy obsession with Peloton. And we both have golden doodles. So I'd say we're doing about like 70% work, 30% sharing. But regardless, I wanted to introduce Lisa. There she is. Lisa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. Thanks, Mary Frances. I'm really looking forward to our time together with you all, and I'm happy to introduce myself. I'm a social worker and the manager of our Aging and Caregiving Support Program, and I also have worked at Iona for 20 years. Working with older adults, families, and caregivers, as well as adult children and siblings, whether local or long distance. And I think to start off, in full disclosure, I should add I really love what I do. And personally and professionally, I can really relate to the rewards and challenges of caregiving. Mary Frances, something we both have in common and that we've talked a lot about over the year or two is that we were both adult daughters that provided a lot of support for our parents, and saw firsthand the emotional and mental toll that took on us, as well as professional. Really saw firsthand through that experience the impact many face, juggling personal life with professional life and caregiving roles and responsibilities. And it really brought to my attention how important it is to have support in place as well. I say it all the time to clients and my participants in my caregiving support groups that it goes without saying, sometimes we need to be reminded how important it is to take care of yourself. If we don't take care of ourselves, it's truly, close to impossible to care for others. I say self-care is a necessity, not a luxury, and something that we really need to be mindful of, and hopefully good friends and family members remind you of that as well if you're in that situation. I'll also add that, besides facilitating many caregiver support groups, that I work with congregations and villages in the community and beyond in different partnerships, serving as their social worker and providing resources and support and information to their members, meeting their needs. And I also work closely with an Iona colleague who is the Fannie Mae Elder Care Consultant, which is a wonderful contract, again, highlighting the importance of caregivers in the workforce and juggling both those roles and providing through employee benefit programs elder care support. And again, this is something that we're looking to expand for the aging and caregiving support program, knowing how important that is. One of the big roles that I play in the aging and caregiving support program is providing consultations. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity for people to really fill their tool bag with different services and programs and the who, what, where before needed. I'm a huge advocate of knowing what you need to know before you need to know it, with the hopes that you could avoid crisis and be prepared for the opportunities and challenges of aging. It's truly what I consider a great gift that you can give yourself and to those who care about you.
That's great. Yeah. All right. So let's get into it. When you first have a client that you first meet, where do you start? What are the first things you say to that person?
Sure, sure. Well, first, I applaud them for connecting with me because, again, filling that tool bag before you need it is so helpful. So I'm big on preparation and being proactive instead of reactive. So, the more information that you can gather, the better suited you are for what lies ahead. And again, thinking about now as well as the future. And although we would love to have that crystal ball to tell us what's happening in the future, we don't have that luxury. So being as prepared as possible, again, could be a wonderful peace of mind gift. And just really laying things out with the resources to be prepared for. I'm always taken aback by, people's resourcefulness and intelligence and resilience. But this is an area that so many are unfamiliar with, and once I start sharing about different resources, so many times people have the expression of I didn't know something like that existed, or I didn't know there's somebody who could come and do that. So just having those tools can make such a big difference for when and if needed.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with talking about the different types of ways to age. And when I'm here at Iona, I often hear people talking about this term, aging in place. I think I understand that, but what does that mean exactly? What are we talking about when we say age in place?
Sure, sure. And you're doing good listening to hear that, because I'm sure that is something that you hear quite often in the halls or whereabouts in Iona for sure. Um, Aging in place is essentially, staying in your home and making, changes and modifications with aging in mind. I say to people all the time when they share with me that their plan or their goal is to age in place, I say that's a wonderful plan. That's a great goal as long as you're open to support in place. So recognizing that as we age, there are areas that for us to stay in our home as long as possible, as safe as possible, with the highest quality of life as possible, we need to be open to support. So that's something that I'm constantly stressing.
Okay, that's great. And when you're talking about support and changes, like what are we talking about? What kind of changes are you talking about that we might need support for?
Yeah, I think, people need to be really open and mindful of, there are certain categories that I kind of highlight when thinking about aging in place, if it's right for me, if it's feasible for me versus thinking about making a move. So I'll break that apart in accessibility and transportation. So thinking about, where you are now. If you were no longer able to drive, thinking about, would you be able to get to your go-to people, your doctors, your activities, your programs? Would it be feasible, personally, financially, to deal with public transportation? Does public transportation come to your area? Would it be financially feasible for you to navigate, Uber or Lyft, things like that? If not, you're really putting yourself in a position where you're going to be isolated, and we know that's not a healthy option. So, thinking about transportation and where you are and what's feasible, and then thinking about the accessibility of your home. If your mobility would be an issue, and you have the main level of your house is on the second floor, bedroom, bathroom, things of that nature. Would it be structurally feasible for you to get a stair lift? Would it be financially feasible for you to manage that? If you are wheelchair bound, are your doorways wide enough to be able to, comfortably, safely move about in your home? Some of the older homes, that might be a situation that you have to deal with. Some homes have, multiple steps to even get into the main entrance. Is a ramp possible? Railings, things of that nature. There are specialists who can come to your home and do a assessment to help you see what can be modified, and then for you to see if that's, personally and financially feasible. They're called aging in place specialists, and that's, one of many that we'll talk about as far as resources to consider for now and the future.
Yeah, I just
Um,
want to highlight that point because you actually helped me with my uncle who lives in Florida, and he is great physically and mentally, except for one thing, and he's going blind, and he lives alone. And he wants to stay in his house independent. And you had a low vision occupational therapist come to his house and change his house setting so that he could be much safer and live independently. I didn't even know that was something that existed, and that was amazing. And now he had us over for dinner just a couple of months ago. So it's really amazing when you set up, your house to thrive given the changes that are happening.
Yeah, no, no, I loved working with him. Thank you. I'm glad that he's doing well. That's great. Another area to focus on is what we call activities of daily living and instrumental activities of daily living. Something that, many of you may be familiar with, hearing ADLs and IADLs. These are tasks that one needs to be able to perform to be able to, manage as safe as possible independently in your environment. And we use this as a gauge to see how much support is needed when people aren't able to successfully manage these tasks. So thinking about the ADLs, we're thinking about the ability to take care of one's personal care, hygiene, oral care, things of that nature. Dressing, not only getting dressed with the appropriate, clothes. The heat of the summer, a turtleneck and wool pants would not be appropriate for dressing. So thinking beyond of just putting things on your body for clothes. Thinking about, independently eating, mobility, as well as transferring the ability, if we're, here at the table, the phone rings or the door rings, safely being able to manage that. Those are areas to be aware of as far as how much you are able to accomplish safely on your own or how much support is needed. And then we talk about the IADLs, or the instrumental activities of daily living. These are tasks that require more organizational skills as well as cognitive ability. So we're talking about managing your medications, managing your finances, the ability to be able to go shop for the food that you're going to prepare, and housekeeping, including laundry, as well as, being able to manage, the phone or computer for safety or connections, as well as, transportation, as far as arranging that, as we were talking about, for public transportation and or, privately using Uber or Lyft. So things to consider. And then finally, but again, not in any special order, being mindful of your opportunities for engagement. I can't stress enough about the importance of, having people and activities and programs to be able to um, emotionally, socially, physically engage and connect to. If your home environment, if your neighborhood, if your community is not conducive to that, then certainly that's a reason to start considering, a potential move, because we know that when one is isolated, there's depression or other conditions that can really negatively impact, one's quality of life and overall well-being. So those are things to certainly consider. And I say all these things, and it's a lot to process. I know, but I think an important takeaway that I hope comes out numerous times is that this is not something that one needs to navigate alone. Connecting with a care manager like myself can really help point you into the directions that you need to be looking at, again, for planning for now as well as the future, and connecting to these resources, again, with, whether it's home care, personal assistance, an aging in place specialist, a money manager, a bill payer, decluttering services, a state elder care attorneys. The list goes on. Just know that this isn't a journey that you need to be able to navigate alone. That there are support and resources that can help you thrive and help you stay, whether in your home as long as possible, or if making a move, help you transition into that move, again, with the highest quality of life possible. Just, you're not alone.
Yeah, I wanted to just punctuate that the opportunities for engagement, because it just brings back a lot of memories about my parents. And my mom had Alzheimer's, and my dad cared for her for many years in the house. And he was a super social guy, super extroverted, had so many friends, tons of activities. And as my mom's disease progressed, his world got increasingly small and restricted. They lived in Florida, and all three of us lived in DC or Philadelphia. So we had aides that would come in, but a lot of the care fell to him. And we really were so focused on her that we did not spend a lot of time thinking about his need to be social. And I know that he became increasingly isolated and depressed. And we all believe that it really exacerbated some of his underlying health conditions because he wasn't taking care of himself. And we just really didn't focus on it at the time. So just something that if anyone else is going through something like that, to be aware of the caregiver as well as the person they're caring for.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Thank you.
yeah. Okay. So you did a great review of all the options and what you need to think about for aging in place. I also want to talk about the other alternatives about community living. I think most of us have heard some of these terms like independent living, assisted living, memory care. But what are the differences about what are all the options first? And what are the differences and how do you know what you might need? How do you decide that or does somebody decide that for you?
No, no, I appreciate it. This is like, an overwhelming, kind of pool to jump into. I recognize that with lots of different pieces of information to, truly understand, to be able to think about and navigate next steps. So happy to break that apart. I'll start off by sharing that, when I connect with, callers or clients, saying that as far as thinking about, level of care, thinking about location, thinking about what's financially feasible, all factor into finding that good fit. So we'll think about all that as we move forward. And with that said, thinking about level of care. This is something that is very important for each community will determine. This is not something that mom, dad, daughter, or son will say, here's what they can do, here's their level of care. It is something that a nurse from each community will assess to be able to determine, what kind of support is needed for that individual to be as safe and well to be in their community. Typically, there are level 1, 2, and 3 that they're working on, that they're focused on. So a level 1 will be, the minimal amount of support. Very little support is needed. Some queuing, some reminders, but the majority of the ADLs and IADLs that we talk to, is of capacity can be done by the individual. Really little to no signs of any kind of memory concerns, and able to manage. A level two is needing a little more hands-on support, guidance, and cueing. There might be some signs of beginning mild cognitive impairment, or a little bit more memory concerns or challenges, where staff and caregivers may need to provide more hands-on support to meet their needs and concerns about the activities of daily living and instrumental activities of daily living. A little higher level support than level one, of course, and not as much support as the level three is needed. A level three is usually the highest level for the care, either for the community. Typically moderate to more advanced memory challenges. The ADLs and IDLs really need almost all support and supervision, and much more dependent on the caregiver and the staff for safety and meeting their needs. Also keep in mind that each level will have a increase in financial responsibilities from the individual, so that the level of care is added to the base price of the community living. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. But thinking about the level of care, that's how it's outlined. And now, let's dive into, the different types of communities. So with that in mind, we have what many may have heard of and are familiar with CCRCs, the continuum care retirement communities, 55 years and older typically. And this is what I consider kind of aging in place in a community. So people could enter these communities as an independent, assisted living needed. There could be memory, there could be skilled, all within like the campus or the community of that particular location. Again, aging in place in this one facility community.
I just wanted to talk about that for a quick second. I have a family friend who they were getting into their 80s, and they were both doing really well. She had a few mobility issues, but nothing major. And they shocked us all and sold their independent house and moved into one of these facilities. And I thought for sure they were not going to like it. They had lived in their house for over 60 years. And my God, they loved it. They were on the bus going to activities. They were down to see shows. They were going out to dinner within the community all the time. They would have us over for dinner. I mean, it got to a point where my husband would joke. He's like, I want to move in here. I mean, always something going on. There's like movies, there's happy hour. So they were really happy with the community, as well as not having to worry about the house upkeep. So it was great for them.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, for so many, it's like a burst of of quality of life that like either wasn't expecting to be at that level. To go into a community when you can really benefit from those activities and that social engagement is wonderful. So yeah, I really appreciate that. So typically those type of communities have what we call a one-time entrance fee, and then you go right into your paying for, depending on like the size of your unit and the level of care, will depend on your ultimate financial responsibility. And this is what we call private pay. Your Blue Cross or your Kaiser or your other insurance is not going to cover the cost of this, so something to be prepared for, and we'll talk more about that as well. So another type of housing is assisted living, which is more care in place than independent, meaning that there are your meals are provided, your housekeeping, you have on-site support from staff and caregivers, and the recreational activities and programs that you could daily pick and choose from to be part of a community and a social network on a daily basis is wonderful for many. Again, the cost is something that depends on the location, the size of your unit, the level of care needs. If one has long-term care insurance, that could be a helpful part of your financial landscape. Otherwise, again, we're looking at a private pay scenario. If we'll talk about the long-term care insurance. Sometimes I have adult children say, I'm not sure if mom or dad has that. And I'll say that, if they have, they know because they've been paying premiums probably for decades. So it's not a surprise or something that they're going to, quickly, try to engage in. So again, something that, people have invested in for quite some time, and every policy is different. So it's not a universal, but again, just stressing the fact that, for some people, they'll say that, my mom or my dad work for the government, they have great insurance. Unfortunately, that is not something to depend on for the cost of living for these communities. Then we have memory care. Memory care, a lot like assisted living, will be able to provide all the support for the activities of daily living. But we have the difference here is that because everybody who is in a memory care has Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, so the staff is trained and skilled to work with people with memory loss. And the difference as far as the community is that we call it a secure environment or a locked environment, so that residents, aren't able to freely, go in and out because, of course, we're worried about their safety and well-being. So there's a difference in that as far as the assisted living. Again, going back to the cost, varies depending on the location, the size, the care needs, other variables. And again, unless one has the long-term care insurance, Medicare or your private insurance is not going to cover the cost for this. So again, being mindful and how important it is to, be aware of the financial situation that you have and planning for the future. Also share about skilled nursing as well as rehabilitation, rehab. This is the highest level of care in a community that one will need if their medical needs and health needs and personal needs are to nursing skill level. And this is, typically, as far as skilled care where, people can, if qualify, as far as Medicaid, get support financially for that. We see in skilled nursing about 20% or close to it are there for what we call short-term stays, typically, from a hospitalization, not, ready to return home, but medically stable to leave the hospital, but need more support with physical therapy or occupational therapy, just not safe and ready to return home. So they're typically there for a short period of time to build their skills. There's, whether it's for mobility and then safely return home. Again, for many, Medicaid is an option. Otherwise, it's private pay. Another type of community that I want to share that for many either unfamiliar with or perhaps had a different version of what this type of housing was. So I really want to just, share the information and hope that this brings, new information to you if that's the case. So group homes. Group homes are licensed as by the state, just as assisted living communities are. And they're, literally homes in neighborhoods that have been modified for whether it's 5 or 6 or 7 older adults to, live in that home and have, the care in place in this, small and nurturing environment. the beauty for many in this group homes is that it is small, it is a nurturing environment, and although they might be licensed, for assisted living, people could age in place there, and the home, the staff, can meet their needs as their needs increases. So I've had clients who have left skilled nursing to go to a group home because they felt that was a better fit. So, up until end of life, they can manage. And other benefits, for many, considering the ratio of caregivers to residents are dramatically smaller when you're talking about 5 to 8 residents. The home environment can be an advantage to many as well. And typically it's much less expensive. So those are things that are, appealing to many. Some, may feel like the programs and activities aren't as robust, or, have concerns about if there's just 5 or 8 people, what if mom or dad doesn't get along with 2 of them? So, those are some things that could be a takeaway for a disadvantage. But again, I say, don't rule things out until, you explore them to see if they could be a good fit. And again, depending on, the size of your room in the home, depending on your level of care, the price could be, in some range, but less expensive than the traditional models that we have talked about earlier.
That's great. I was familiar with most of those terms, but I had never heard about group homes. So I'm glad you explained that. That's a totally new concept to me. I just wanted to share just personally a shout out to all the caregivers in independent, assisted, all of them, memory care especially. We used all of those, and when my mom was going through Alzheimer's, it was really hard for me to help her. I was really struggling with remembering her, who she was, and it was always I was always behind in catching up with who she was at that current time. And my memories of who she had been in the past really interfered with that. I would be trying to bring her to the places that she used to like, give her and put her in clothes that she used to like to wear, do things that we used to like to do, and none of those things were really working. And especially when she was living at home with my dad, I think she felt a lot of pressure to try and maintain a certain role that was becoming increasingly difficult and at some point impossible for her to kind of keep doing. And when we moved her into memory care, I mean, she was so happy. And, it was a bit of a rough transition for sure in the beginning, but she just really thrived there. And all of those caregivers were able to meet her where she was. They had no problem. They didn't know who she was before. And so they just easily jumped into this new version for me of her. And I just want to note that if anyone else is going through that and they're struggling with that baggage of who that person used to be, just know that there are people out there who can really help your loved one thrive.
Yeah.
All right. So before I ask the next question, I just want to do a quick housekeeping because I see some hands. If you do have a question, please put them in the chat box. That is at the bottom. It should be at the bottom of your screen where it says chat. Just type that in there, and we will get to as many questions as possible at the end of this hour. If we don't get to your question, don't worry about it. We will get back to you on email and answer that question specifically. Also, a few of you have been asking, I saw in the chat, will this be recorded? And yes, it will be recorded. It will exist on our website. So if you want to rewatch it or send it to some people that you think might benefit from it, please feel free, and that will be up in the coming days. All right, so now I want to just ask the question, the big elephant in the room. You kind of alluded to it, but let's get into the details. All of these different options, whether it be living at home, aging in place, or the various types of community living, sound amazing. But what does it cost, and how do you pay for it?
Good question. I'm glad that it looks like everybody is sitting because I know it takes a lot of, take your breath away if this is new information for you. So everyone may want to take a deep breath and get yourself a little, yes, I see a few, ready for the information about to share. So yeah, it's an important question, one that, many would like to avoid or deny as long as possible. But I think it's so important for us to discuss, and something that I share constantly, with clients and during consultations, of how important it is for you to truly understand like your financial landscape for now, as well as planning for the future of increased needs, and again, thinking about aging in place, the cost of that versus making a move, and the cost of that, that could be part of your reality. So with that said, whether you're, if you're aging in place and support in place is needed, home care services such as, caregivers coming to the home is something that is typically, the top of somebody's list, or something that I, address very quickly, as far as recognizing, the need of support, and that need increasing as time goes on. So preparing yourself for typically anywhere from $32 to $37 an hour for people, for someone to come in and be able to assist with those ADLs and IDLs. And typically the agencies require a 4-hour minimum with a few days a week. So, a minimum of 12 hours or 16 hours for the week, to think that about that, as far as, the 32 times, 4, the 32 times 12, whatever that may be for your level of care. And this could grow. So you're talking about, the 4 hours could turn into 8 hours, or 12 hours can turn into, a full 24-hour shift, or what we call a live-in, and I just want to, break that two up. We talk about 24 hours versus a live-in. If you are not open to somebody staying and living in your home, or you don't have the space for another person and you need the 24 hours, then you're looking at that $32 to $37 an hour times 24 for your daily rate of home care. If you have the space and available and open to a live-in, typically 2 or 3 people sharing the shifts, these agencies will have like a flat fee, so that might be about $500. So if that's feasible, there's a cost savings there. So, it could be up to $600 or $700 or $800 for that 24-hour model, or a $500 flat fee. So something to think about when you're thinking about exceeding the 4 or 6 hours and needing a 24-hour or 24-hour model. That really factors into, is it affordable? Is it something that I could afford and want to sustain, living at home with all that care, or moving to a community where care is part of the model? And when you think about moving to a community, we talked about, being mindful of the different variables, the different community, the location, the level of care, the size of your unit, all impact, price, thinking about what we say your base rate. But I think it's important for you to go into the exploration with an understanding that that those communities could be typically anywhere from $8,000 to $13,000 a month, depending on all those variables. Again, it could be a little bit less or it could be a little bit more, but I think when you're financially planning, to have that range as a reality is important. We talked about the group home concept, and one of the advantage for many is the cost. So, again, looking at the group homes, typically an individual can, have their care and their room and all the necessities that go along with day-to-day living, could be in the, high 6 to high 8, till end of life, as meeting their needs. So there is a financial difference between those models. So something definitely, to be aware of. And as I brought up, again, although it would be so lovely and so nice if we had, the concept of like, I have really good insurance. Insurance will cover it. That's not the reality, unfortunately. So you really need to be aware of the financial, responsibilities for these type of needs or the move. So again, Medicare, Blue Cross, Kaiser, they're not going to be part of the financial, system to help you. Again, if you have long-term care insurance, that's something that is policy by policy. Some policies have, a no wait period, some 30, 60, 90 days before they, once one is eligible, that they will start reimbursing. And then the reimbursement is very, specific to, literally what you bought into as far as your policy. Some may have a day rate that they reimburse that's, helps supplement the cost. Some may have like a lump sum for X amount of years. So again, if you have a policy, something to look into, and call the company that you're working with if you have questions, and or again, something a care manager can help you navigate, as well. And I want to share that hospice is covered by Medicare, a wonderful program that can provide lots of support and assistance. And whether you're home or in a community of care, they can provide that level of support. So to know that. And I know that that's important for many. And the other specialists like physical therapy or occupational therapy, especially if recently hospitalized, discharged home, um, Medicare insurance will help cover that cost. So know that. And again, important to know about the specifics of your individual long-term care policy if you have one.
I also just wanted to make a shout out to the hospice selection. If you when my parents were quite ill, and my father eventually was in nursing care and my mother was in memory care, at some point we elected to go into hospice within those facilities, and what that did was it stopped the the multiple trips to the hospital if someone was not, feeling well, all of that, which was very disruptive at that point in their life, and we could just be with that person. And that was really great to just have that option, to just be quiet and be with that person. So just something to consider.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I'll echo that, like from personal, like at the end, my dad was in memory care, and also elected hospice. Thinking about the extra layer of support and services, and it was a huge peace of mind also for me, knowing that my mom wasn't getting those calls at random times of the night or early morning about a hospitalization and needing to, in panic mode, go, and for me to be worried about both of their well-being, and the hospice, caregivers and support team were, amazing. And there are times where I don't know what we would have done without them. So I echo, your applaud to them. So definitely.
in addition to cost, the other thing I remember was just the mountains of complicated paperwork, when we were transferring over a lot of the responsibilities to me from my father, when he was in nursing care. It was just overwhelming. And I just, what do you tell people who are kind of facing that or about to face that, who also have full-time jobs and are caring for children and running a household? How does somebody manage that? Because I thought that was just truly shocking and overwhelming.
Yeah, you're right. Well, your thought is absolutely overwhelming, shocking, and at times, just completely, depleting and draining. So, I appreciate that. And that's where, someone like myself can, jump in and really provide, hands-on, support. A care manager can really help assess and put people and resources into place to make a huge difference. As I mentioned, some of the specialists earlier, once gathering information about, somebody's, needs and their situation, being able to explore, the who, what, where, and put those into place. So coordinating after assessing one's needs for now and the future, help coordinating those needs and arrange those types of services. Again, stressing that you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to navigate, the who, what, where on your own. And again, always thinking about filling your, toolkit with tools, whether it's for now or the future, as a peace of mind, that you can take with you. So thinking about, connecting to money managers and bill payers, personal assistants, elder care attorneys, thinking about estate planning for many, decluttering, a big issue, especially with, so many people who, have been in their homes for 20, 30, 40 years or more. It's just the reality that things accumulate and need some help, whether it's donating or throwing out or sending to family in other states. You don't have to take that task on by yourself. Helping with medical referrals, kind of navigating that, hopefully before a crisis, but understanding that we're there during a crisis to help ease that. Do a lot of caregiving coaching. Again, as you shared, Mary Frances, just feeling overwhelmed and, whether you're balancing, personal life with professional life, carpooling or other, volunteering or roles and responsibilities. It's just not feasible or sustainable to, be in that, constant 100% mode. It's not healthy. So connecting with a care manager can really help reduce some of that, daily or regular stress or pressure. And again, provide you with tools to make it, easier and healthier for you to manage. So also dealing, not just with like the local needs and resources. I'm working with, individuals, adult children or older adults that are out of state and connecting them to resources that meet their needs that serve their area. So again, I hope a huge takeaway is that you do not have to navigate this alone, and connecting, for a consultation can be a first step in really feeling some peace of mind for now as well as the future.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everything you're saying so resonates with me. I mean, I will say we had a bunch of different specialists come in to help us. And, just simple things. We had some memory care experts come in when my mom was still living in the house, and they just very gently and clearly identified such simple things to help my mom that we had no idea. Like the fact that we didn't realize she could no longer tell time. And so we switched everything to digital. Her watch was digital, the clocks were digital. Th didn't even occur to us. And it was just so many simple things like that, that just was like huge light bulb moments. And the other thing they did for us, even along all the different journeys we were on with my parents, was they they very nicely, in not a scary way, kind of told us what to expect down the road. And so that was almost power for us. It was helpful to know what we were looking at most likely and what that was going to feel like and the things we need to put in place. It took the anxiety way down for us. So I cannot um, just highlight that enough. And assuming there are other people on this call, because there's a lot of us on this call who are either in that position or are anticipating having to be in a similar position. How can people get in touch with people like you? What do they do?
No, great questions. Well, I can share for me that I offer what we call like a 15-minute complimentary call to, again, introduce myself, the program, ways that I can provide support, resources, and information to meet your individual needs. And then, if interested, the next step would be scheduling a consultation. And that's the opportunity, like I said, to really gather the information and be able to provide the resources, support, and information to meet those individual, specific needs. Again, a big fan of knowing what you need to know before you need to know it. So I applaud people who also are reaching out, sharing that, like, we're really doing well. And, right now we have no health issues, but like we've been in our house for 40 years and we just want some, to know what we need to know. Like, you, again, not waiting for a crisis is the ideal time to, fill your tool bag, gather your information, and, to be able to have that peace of mind of knowledge, and empower yourself for, in case the who, what, where, you have that information before you need it. So again, you can reach out to me directly for if you're interested in the 15-minute call, and next steps would be, scheduling that consultation for the one-on-one.
Okay, great. Lisa, this has been super helpful. I love talking to you.
Thank you.
It's just really eye-opening and empowering to get this information. We do have some questions.
Great.
All
Thank
right.
you for everyone for being here and for like the housekeeping rules of like, of waiting until the chat to share your questions. So appreciate that.
Okay, I feel like Vanna White here. Question
Yeah.
number one. Um, are aging in place specialists for advising on accessibility in the home, are they available through Iona?
So the resources that I would share, they're not employees of Iona, but what I like to say is that, over the 20 years and the positive feedback of clients, they're what I consider like my go-to resources. I say it often that any, referrals or resources that I'm sharing with, clients are ones that I would share with my family and friends. So feel very comfortable and confident, but they're within the community. They're not, working, with or for Iona. A good question.
Okay. And another question related to this is what are the typical costs of a care manager?
The typical cost, our cost, we're talking 195 an hour. And, I share with, people that, there's no rules or right or wrong. For some people, it could be a consultation, some it could be ongoing. For some, and often I would say, weekly, I'm connected with somebody who reconnects and says, Lisa, I don't know if you remember me, but 3 years ago we talked about, my mom, and now I have, an issue that I'm facing dealing with my dad or my brother, So once the relationship, is established and connected, it's always open for you to return. So again, it's totally what meets your needs as far as, the level of connection and care that's in place.
Okay, great.
And
Um,
so, but I to follow up with that, that's our rate, but I can share that, within the community, that you're looking at for, many other organizations, or privately, in the, 200, 250, some have more of a package or plan. Again, at Iona, we do not. So, if it's a consultation and that's helpful, then that's certainly something that, we welcome.
and we also have the Iona resource guide too, which I believe has a lot of great information in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's online as, as well as, often, within like the building, but, it's a wonderful resource, for, programs, services, communities, definitely.
Okay. And how do you find reputable companies that offer these services? How do you get those?
So again, personally, it's, I've worked within the field for, 20 plus years, and there are referrals, companies, agencies, individuals that have stayed, on my quote unquote go-to list for years, decade plus, and others that, unfortunately have shown that, they don't meet the standards above and beyond of what they should to meet, clients' needs and expectations, and they're no longer part of the referral. But again, being part of the elder care landscape and within the community of support, knowing what clients are looking for and what they need, and having history with these individuals, again, will allow me to continue that relationship to refer them or not.
Okay, great. This is a little more specific, but this question is about prepaid funeral expenses. Are there any services to help with preparing an irrevocable trust for prepaid funeral expenses?
Yeah, absolutely. Can connect you to whether it's an elder care attorney, a specialist, to make sure that that is legally documented, and connect you to, the specific organization that you're interested in. But that's a wonderful gift to yourself and to family members to, to plan ahead for that. So whoever asked that question, great question.
Um, Someone would like you to clarify the level of support that hospice does. They feel it's
Sure.
limited at home visits, but not care daily, and they ask if it's different for a hospital hospice, and is that covered?
So hospice is covered, yes, and a good question. And I always, really stress that hospice is not in lieu of home care or other support. Home care support is still part of the need for care and support of your aging adult or the individual under hospice. Hospice is in addition to that. So they're not going to be able to spend hours on end, as a caregiver or a support system, but certainly they're, a phone call away to be able to come during, a crisis or a concern or a need, that instead of taking to the hospital or having to go to a doctor. So, it's a higher level of care, but it's, again, it does not substitute home care. Another benefit many see is as far as, equipment that may be needed. Again, covered under Medicare, a hospital bed, again, thinking about, multiple levels in the home. This is a time where often, the living bedroom space has to be transferred to the first floor, and a hospital bed may be needed, or a hospital bed in the bedroom, again, for safety. It's lower and fall risk, and you don't have to navigate where I'm going to get a hospital bed, or other mobility equipment that may be needed, pain management. So again, a level of support, but not taking the place of your hours of home care support.
And Iona also has some end of life experts as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on my part of the aging and caregiving support program. We have a nurse case manager who specializes in end of life, a former hospice nurse that has a wealth of knowledge that could, assist with resources, information, and support in regards to end of life. Absolutely, great question.
Um, there's also a question here around the gaps between expectation and reality regarding staff to resident ratios, and the limits to the amount of time staff in these, I believe, community living can spend for people visiting with residents. So can you talk a little bit about that? I did experience that as well, that, people are very busy in these facilities.
Yeah, it is the reality. And, we're also for quite some time dealing with the reality of a lot of these communities, being short of staff, or, the caregivers, needing to, cover multiple shifts. So, they're understandably exhausted. But, typically, when you're dealing with, a community of care, the ratio could be rather high. One caregiver, is not unusual for them to have, double digits is who they're responsible for. So that means that, somebody could be, waiting or ringing the bell for assistance, whether it's to, use the restroom or change or need water or thirsty or something, different for 20, 30, 40 minutes sometimes, and that's a huge concern and complaint of many. Of course, they try their best and meet the needs, but that's just a reality. I say, when you're exploring these communities, to ask about what is the ratio of caregiver to resident, so that you're not surprised or shocked by this once your family member or loved one is in the community. Also asking about like the longevity. There's something to be said when that you've got a staff that has been there for years and years. They're happy, their residents are happy, they're treated well, their residents are treated well. Those are two takeaway questions that I stress to ask and know ahead of time.
Okay, great. I think we only have time for one more question. And this question is there a minimum number of hours per consulting services? I think this person is probably referring to your services.
Yeah, so typically like the consultation is 1 hour, and you're not obligated or signing for anything more than that. It's up to what your needs are, and for you to initiate how much more support is needed. A consultation typically is an hour. Sometimes it could be a little bit more, and follow up doesn't necessarily have to be an hour. Sometimes I have like a 30-minute call, or there might be over the month 2 or 3 15 or 20-minute connections. So not that you have to feel like, well, I've got to wait until I have an hour's worth of questions, or this isn't really a crisis but would be helpful to know. Really stressing and promoting that for you to feel that you have support, you're not alone, and that when you need a connection, not to think twice about reaching out.
Okay, well, thank you so much for this, Lisa. I really appreciate sharing this information. And thank you to everyone who took an
Thank
hour
you.
out of their busy day to join us. We hope you found this useful and helpful. And we will look to do additional webinars in the future if people found this helpful. So you will be getting some information after this call, and someone's waving, I'm waving back. And I think there'll be a question asking you what topics in this general area that you'd like to hear more about. So stay tuned, and I wish you all a great rest of your day.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate you all being here and the questions, and look forward to, hearing and connecting with you more. And as always, Mary Frances, great to talk with you.
Likewise, I'll see you on the next Peloton ride.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.